Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Caroline Snyder. I am the Education and Outreach Specialist for the Georgia Cotton Commission. Today, I would like to introduce to you our next speaker, Mr. Darryl Earnest. Darryl Earnest has served as Deputy Administrator for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Agricultural Marketing Service, Cotton and Tobacco Program since 2005. He has spent his entire government career with the program since joining Agricultural Marketing Service in 1990 after graduating from college. Over his career, Darryl has served in many different areas of cotton operations and program management, and in 2008 assumed direction of the Agricultural Marketing Service tobacco program when it joined Cotton as part of the agency merger. As national director for both, he is ultimately responsible for all operations within the cotton and tobacco divisions. In 2011, Darryl moved his Washington, D.C. headquarters office to Memphis, Tennessee to streamline program leadership. Cotton and tobacco grades, all cotton produced in the U.S. for fiber quality used to market the cotton all over the world. This equates to approximately $7 to $8 billion in raw cotton value each year to the U.S. cotton industry, and much more in expanded value throughout the supply chain. In addition, the program grades all cotton submitted for futures trading with the Intercontinental Exchange, produces all universal cotton standards used for instrument and manual cotton grading in over 50 countries worldwide, disseminates cotton and tobacco market news information to millions of users annually, grades all cotton, all domestic tobacco submitted for crop insurance adjustments through the USDA's Risk Management Agency, and oversees the Cotton Research and Promotion Program through oversight of both the Cotton Board and Cotton Incorporated budgets. Darryl is currently leading the Cotton and Tobacco Initiative toward a fully automated and vertically integrated methodology for cotton grading, as well as full integration of business analytics into all facets of program operation. That includes new facility designs, renovations, and acquisitions to accomplish this vision. He is a 1990 graduate of the University of Alabama, where he earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Industrial Engineering. So at this time, I will turn it over to Mr. Earnest.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen real quick here. All right, can you see that, Taylor or someone?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Sure appreciate the opportunity to join the Georgia Cotton Commission meeting and the invitation to give a little bit of an overview of some of the things that we saw, especially this year with it being a very challenging year, as was mentioned earlier. I'm going to touch on just a few things really quickly, and then I think we've got another speaker that's going to talk about it as well. But I want to talk a little bit about the seasonal quality averages for the Georgia area and the Southeast. I'm going to touch on plastic contamination since it's been a key subject of late, and then obviously go into the Seacoast fragments and extraneous matter issue and talk a little bit about our process, because I know there were a lot of questions about that. So thus far this year, and we're getting close to the end of the season as it pertains to the Macon, Georgia classing office. The overall territory for Macon that serves all of Georgia, all of Florida, and the southern half of Alabama has actually had a pretty good overall quality year. Here you see some of the averages. I won't go into those specifically, but you can see the predominant color grades and the percent of the crop in the Southeast that had that. The average leaf grade is about 3.5. Average micron is about 4.3. A strong staple average and length average, and a good solid strength average and uniformity. Now, looking at Georgia specifically, those numbers are pretty close, obviously, because Georgia has the majority of the cotton in that territory, but you can kind of see how those percentages will pan out as compared to the overall area. And that's based on about 1.95 million bales classed so far from 59 gens in Georgia. In terms of plastic contamination for the season nationwide, we've called 3,403. This was as of mid last week, out of the crop class thus far by then, which was a little over 13.6 million bales. And most of those were just level 1. We only had 2 level 2 plastic calls. And as you can see by classing office, this is how kind of it panned out on number of bales called. And this is a little deceiving given that the crop in 2020 was significantly lower in size. But you can kind of see how that plays out. And in Macon, we did see a decrease somewhat in the number of plastic calls. When you look across the board, though, this is taking 2020 versus 2019 and applying it as a percentage of the overall bales classed in each office. We really only had 3 offices that decreased the overall percentage given the smaller crop, and those were in Dumas, Arkansas, Corpus Christi, Texas, and Visalia. In Macon, though, they did stay. We had a little bit of an uptick in overall percentage, but the difference was really nominal, showing it was pretty consistent from one year to the next. Overall, the percentage classed plastic calls per percentage classed of the crop stayed almost exactly the same as the previous year. I guess the good news on that is it didn't get worse. The bad news is it really didn't get better, but I know a lot of efforts continue. We did continue to see the predominant type of plastic be the round module wrapping, with almost 90% this year of the plastic we saw being in that type, and that would be the yellow, the pink. We also saw the introduction this year of blue and orange, which were 2 other colors of module wrapping. So that still is the predominant type. We do continue to work with the National Cotton Council's Quality Task Force. I know Kent Fountain heads that up. So we've been working a lot with Kent and that group trying to assist in their efforts. We did continue our procedure of calling gins whenever we found plastic, and we did follow that up with an email and hold the samples at the office for any reference that they might want to have. We did change the protocol this year where anytime a 71 or a 72 call is called, it will be retained on that bale regardless of any reviews, reworks, or anything that happens to that bale. That was a decision that was made with the support of all segments in the industry. Overall extraneous matter, let me turn to that a little bit. We did see obviously an increase this year in extraneous matter. This is total percentage of crop. So we had a substantial increase from 2019, and really the second highest percentage that we've seen over the last 7 seasons. And a lot of that, unfortunately, was attributed to Seacoast fragments that we saw in the Macon, Georgia territory. Over nationwide, we saw over 1 million bales thus far classed with seed coats. And if you look at it by type compared to the previous year, you can see that seed coat fragments was massively increased from the previous year. We did see a decrease in bark, but we think that is probably attributed to the fact that a lot of the cotton that we saw with seed coats also had bark, and seed coats was the predominant type of extraneous, so that's what got the call. In the Macon office itself, 41% of the crop, and I think this was as of end of last week, was called with extraneous matter, with the majority of that being seed coats. So let's talk a little bit about that. Again, this is showing the same graph I showed before. We did see that big increase, and when you look at the seed coats by office, we did see increases in other offices as well, especially in the Southeast and Mid-South. I'll touch on that a little bit in a minute when we get into some of the effects. We also saw some increases. We saw an increase out west. We did see some of the office stay pretty stable, and some of them actually decreased, but obviously nothing compared to the massive increase we saw in the Georgia area and the Southeast. And from a percentage standpoint, in the previous year in Macon, we had called 1,652 calls for almost a 3.5 million bale crop. That was 0.047% this year to date, over a million 35,000, probably closer to 1,040,000 by now, up over 40% of the crop we called with seed coats. So what was the difference in the 2020 season? Well, I mean, the biggest difference that we saw, and we always look at, what has changed from one season to the previous seasons that could cause such a significant anomaly. The biggest thing we saw was the weather. Obviously, we had a lot of weather events that came through the South this year, with 3 hurricanes coming through the Southeast and the Mid-South, 5 hurricanes actually coming ashore. And we tracked that with the help of the National Cotton Council, helped us put this map together. This shows all the counties with the different numbers of bales with Seacoast called. And this starts out in November. And just quickly going through it, this is December 11th, December 16th, January 4th, and then January 22nd. So it's clear that path of counties through there started out with Seacoast fragment problems that tracked kind of with the weather patterns, and it stayed consistent throughout the season. There were no changes to our operational procedures in 2020. I know I received a lot of inquiries and calls about that. We had no equipment changes, and really the equipment has nothing to do with the Seacoast fragment calls anyway, or the extraneous matter calls, but we didn't have any equipment introduced in Macon. The handling of the samples were the same. The classing process was the same, and our quality management program that I'll touch on the procedures in a minute was all the same. So, the key thing there is we saw an abundance starting out early, and it really stayed consistent throughout the season. This is just a quick busy. I'm not going to go through this slide, but I wanted to show this as a breakdown. This is all the counties that the Macon, Georgia office services in Alabama, Florida, and Georgia. There's 2 slides of these. And the key thing is to look at the percent seed coat as you go down through there. It's consistently, it's consistently high, but that kind of shows the systemic nature of this particular anomaly that we saw this year. When you go down and look at the rest of the counties in Georgia, you kind of see that no one was really immune to it this year. It kind of caught everybody. A lot of them, some of them are a little higher in percentages than others, but overall it was high everywhere. This is just the NAS districts. We put this map up again to show kind of how the percentages break out by how the districts are broken out from NAS. And again, it just shows kind of the systemic nature of this issue. Now, let me talk a little bit about the classing process, because I know we had a lot of questions come in about that. And we had a lot of visitors. And just to remind everybody how our classing process works, if you haven't seen it, after we class the cotton on an instrument for all of the instrument factors, every sample goes to a classer, and that classer opens the sample up a minimum of 2 times on each side, and that's to look for any presence of extraneous matter. And the classer will go through the sample thoroughly to determine if there is any extraneous matter, to what degree, how much, what type, etc. So if it's deemed to have an appreciable amount, the classer will then determine what is the most substantial type, if there's multiple types, and they'll put that into the computer as a code. And that's matched up with the PBI that goes into the database that then marries up with the instrument data. So all that becomes part of the record. As I said, if more than one type of extraneous matter is detected, the more prominent one will be called. Whenever we see plastic, though, plastic is considered a contaminant and will usually always take precedent over anything else. In the case of Seacoast fragments, it's a little bit different than some of our extraneous matter in that we can usually feel them in the sample when a classer picks them up. One analogy that we've heard and that we've actually used too is it's kind of like feeling cornflakes crunched up in a sample. You can feel the pieces kind of stick you in the hand. They're more jagged than leaf. There'll also be sometimes whole seed or cracked pieces of seed. They'll also often have fiber attached that'll intertwine with the sample, which is much different than how leaf reacts. They can be small in size or large in size. These are a couple of pictures that we took where the one on the left is more of the smaller pieces, where the one on the right has got some larger pieces. And these are usually more rigid and more dense than common leaf particles. In terms of training and the classers, how we do that nationwide, all of the classers that we have in the program all go through the same multi-week training regardless of their office location. They are trained on all types of extraneous matter, even if that office doesn't see a lot of that type. So if you've got a classer, say in Macon, or a classer in La Mesa, Texas, or one in Visalia, California, they're going to be trained on all of the same types of extraneous matters. Our classing offices and our quality assurance division here in Memphis do send out samples that we hold every year with all kinds of examples of extraneous to use in drills and also in the tests that the classers must take. And then the quality assurance division also acquires and puts together all of those final tests. All trainees must pass an applied test to prove that knowledge before they can become an official classer, and their performance is monitored daily throughout the season. So let me talk a little bit about the quality assurance procedures that we do. During the course of a shift, we'll have supervisors, what we call walking the tables, which means they'll just continuously walk around and stop at each table to work with the classer to see kind of how the quality of the cotton is coming, ensure the accurate classing, help them if they're on a borderline call, that kind of thing. Every shift, we select samples at random in our mainframe computers from every classer, and those go to be reviewed each day by supervisory personnel, and those results are kind of given back to the classers as a report card. But from those, we also pull another portion that we send to Memphis to our quality assurance division, and they review those as well. And that helps to not only ensure the accuracy and consistency of the office's calls and their review, but also the supervisor, so that everybody can kind of stay on the same level and on the same page of accuracy and consistency. We do generate a lot of reports. The offices get these usually in either on their computer or sometimes on screens that we have up in the labs themselves that show quality statistics, averages, biases, the results from the check lots that we pull, any kind of information that we can provide to them that they can see in real time to help them is what we try to put together. We do have at least a weekly meeting, and we do it more frequently if necessary. We call it quality meeting, where we bring together all of the area directors of every office as well as management personnel to go over the statistics from the office, discuss any areas of concern, monitor the progress, talk about follow-up actions and things of that nature. And that's in addition to the regular supervision that our grading division gives over each office. We do analyze a tremendous amount of data because we have all of the data available to us. So we use a business analytics platform that allows us to analyze these in a lot of different ways and provide that input back to our offices. From the beginning of a season, offices will also send what we call special check lots or specials into quality assurance, which are just small lots, sometimes 20 to 30 samples. And they want QA to check those and just give them an idea of if they're seeing the same kind of thing. And this could be oftentimes in situations like we saw in Macon, for sure. This will happen early on in the season. It continues periodically throughout. And in the course of Macon, they sent specials into Memphis almost throughout the whole season this year. A lot of them are borderlines where they want to see what quality assurance will call what they consider to be a borderline call so that they can make sure that they get lined up properly with them. And it's just another way for us to verify our accuracy and consistency. We do typically return these samples back to the offices too, to use and reference with their classers and also in any training they might do. Anytime we have an anomaly, we do it usually anyway, but anytime we have an anomaly like we did this year in Macon, we also send some of our senior managers down from grading and quality assurance. That can be our grading division director or the deputy director or any number of people will go and actually visit. We did that this year in Macon, where we had them go down and spend some time with the supervisors and the staff just to get a firsthand view of what's going on. So just to recap this, I'm not going to go through all these, but this is just a list of all the various kinds of checks and balances that we do to try to ensure that we are classing all samples accurately. These are part of our regular routine. So this happens every year, regardless of whether we have an issue like we had this year with Seacoast fragments or not, as an effort to make sure that we call everything accurately. All of these procedures that I just went over are the same for all classing offices nationwide, regardless of the region they're in or what type of cotton that they have. Now, I just want to quickly touch on some frequent, these are some of the things that I know we were asked a lot, and I think maybe the commission was. I know Southern Southeastern and our office in Macon was asked. The Seacoast fragment issue in the Macon territory was regional. We didn't see it happen anywhere else, as you saw by the graphs, and we think it was mostly related to weather, but I think Ed's going to speak to that a little bit more. All class and offices have the same procedures, again, as I said earlier, and they're trained according to the same standards and procedures. The classers receive samples during the course of a shift from multiple gens. They rarely even look at the PBI cards. I know that was a question about whether some classers are calling things different than other classers. They're moving at a pace to where they really don't have time to look at the card itself. They scan the card so that the record can be put into the system, but they're getting PBI cards and samples from multiple gens throughout the course of a shift. So they really aren't paying attention to where the cotton's coming from. There was a question about randomly sending cotton around to other offices. We can't do that predominantly because our offices are coded into the PBI cards. The only way you could really do that is an office that's, say, coded for Florence, South Carolina, or Memphis, Tennessee, would have to stop their operation and convert their mainframe over to a Macon, Georgia code, run that cotton out, and then switch it all back over, which is just kind of against, it's cost prohibitive for one thing, but would not be an easy thing to do. Now, I will say that we did send some cotton into Memphis this year to help Noah Bell with his workload. We did also send some cotton over to Corpus Christi, Texas, after Corpus had completed their crop, so we could switch their mainframe over to emulate Macon's. And all of those results were consistent with what we were calling in Macon. The territories, we got asked about that too. The territories that we set up for our offices are really established to accommodate sample hauling routes, because we go to the gens every day to get the samples, the proximity to the offices, how we balance out the size of our operations, etc. We did do some collaboration this year with USDA, the Secretary's Office, and the Georgia Department of Agriculture. Secretary Perdue did release a press release that we assisted him with on January 5th, encouraging producers and other stakeholders to come and visit our office and see firsthand what we do in the classing arena to better understand how we do it. We were happy to have Commissioner Black also endorse that. So we hope that went out to everybody and you saw it. We certainly have always welcomed visitors to come see our operations. Of course, this year's been more challenging with COVID, but we have not, although we've changed our procedures to make it more stringent and limit the number of people that can come to our office, we still allow it as long as they can. We ask them to set up an appointment with us, and they have to abide by our COVID protocol, which is very, very strict. We have had some groups that came this year through, a lot of them through Southern Southeastern and other groups. And then I know Southern Southeastern put out some information through their Gen Press newsletter. So we appreciate that outreach as well. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to stop. I want to always end by thanking everyone for your business, for your trust. You know, we, like was mentioned earlier in the bio, we do class all the cotton in the country. We're very proud of that fact. We're very proud of the fact that the industry trusts us to class the entire crop, and we take every single thing that we do with that very seriously. So I will stop with welcoming everybody. When you have an opportunity, to please come and see our operation. Thank you all.